In January 1934, some of the most wanted bank robbers in America were hiding in Tucson, Arizona. Police did not know they were there. No detective had followed them across the country, and no warrant had revealed their location. Instead, the break in the case came when a hotel caught fire. Two members of John Dillinger's gang became so concerned about the luggage they had left upstairs that they paid firefighters to go back inside and retrieve it. The bags were unusually heavy, the tip was unusually generous, and the firefighters remembered their faces. Within days, John Dillinger and three of his closest associates were behind bars. One of the most famous arrests of the Depression-era gangster period had begun almost entirely by accident. By the beginning of 1934, John Dillinger's name was becoming nationally notorious. After being paroled from Indiana State Prison in May 1933, he had joined a group of experienced criminals that included Harry Pierpont, Charles Makley, and Russell Clark. The gang robbed banks and raided police arsenals for weapons, ammunition, and bulletproof vests. Dillinger had already been arrested once, only to be freed from the Lima, Ohio jail when members of the gang arrived pretending to be lawmen. During that escape, Sheriff Jess Sarber was shot and killed. By January, the gang had every reason to put distance between themselves and the Midwest. Several members traveled south and west, eventually reaching Tucson, Arizona, where they hoped they might disappear among winter visitors and tourists. The plan was simple: keep a low profile, use false names, rent houses, and wait until the attention surrounding the gang began to fade. Charles Makley and Russell Clark checked into the Hotel Congress in downtown Tucson. They were not supposed to attract attention. They were supposed to look like ordinary travelers, but one morning a fire broke out in the hotel and began spreading throughout the building. Guests were evacuated while firefighters battled the flames. Makley and Clark made it outside safely, but something important remained upstairs. Their luggage was still inside the burning hotel. The two men asked firefighters William Benedict and Robert Freeman to retrieve their bags. The firefighters carried the luggage down an aerial ladder and noticed something unusual. The suitcases were extremely heavy. Makley or Clark then gave the men a $12 tip, a considerable amount of money during the Great Depression. Nothing about that proved the men were criminals, but the combination of their anxiety over the luggage, its weight, and the generous tip made them memorable. The following afternoon, Benedict and Freeman were looking through a detective magazine when they recognized photographs of the men from the hotel. The ordinary travelers they had helped during the fire appeared to be members of the Dillinger gang. The firefighters contacted law enforcement, and Tucson police began tracing where the luggage had gone after leaving the hotel. That led them to a recently rented house at 927 North 2nd Avenue. On January 25th, Tucson police began making arrests. Russell Clark was found at the 2nd Avenue house. When officers approached, Clark fought for control of an officer's pistol and reached for another weapon hidden beneath a pillow. Officers eventually subdued him without a gunfight. Charles Makley was arrested separately at the Grabe Electric Company in downtown Tucson. Harry Pierpont was also located and taken into custody after police used his automobile and his Florida registration as a way to bring him within reach of officers. Piece by piece, the group was disappearing, but John Dillinger did not yet know what had happened. Later that day, Dillinger approached the 2nd Avenue house. Police were waiting. Instead of walking into a house occupied by his friends, he walked into an arrest. He initially identified himself as Frank Sullivan and carried documents supporting the false identity. At the police station, officers photographed and fingerprinted him. Tucson fingerprint expert Mark Robbins compared the prints with records of the Dillinger gang and then looked at the man standing in front of him. A scar on his wrist and another near his upper lip helped confirm what the fingerprints already showed. Tucson police had John Dillinger. The scale of the arrest quickly became apparent. Authorities recovered nearly $27,000 along with an extraordinary collection of weapons and equipment. Federal records later described 3 Thompson submachine guns, 2 Winchester rifles modified for automatic fire, and 5 bulletproof vests among the items seized from the gang. One of the most heavily armed criminal groups in the country had been dismantled by local police without the large gun battle many officers might have expected. Dillinger's arrest created a sensation in Tucson. He was eventually returned to Indiana to face charges connected to the killing of East Chicago police officer William O'Malley. Authorities placed him in the Lake County Jail at Crown Point, where officials believed they could hold him securely. They were wrong. On March 3rd, only weeks after Tucson police captured him, Dillinger escaped from Crown Point. According to the story that became famous afterward, he used a gun he claimed had been carved from wood to intimidate guards. took weapons from their jail, and fled in the sheriff's automobile. Driving that stolen car across the state line finally gave federal investigators a clear federal offense to pursue. John Dillinger would spend the next several months running from law enforcement until he was killed outside the Chicago's Biograph Theater in July 1934. But one of the strangest chapters of that manhunt had taken place hundreds of miles away in Tucson. Dillinger's gang had survived bank robberies, police pursuits, jailbreaks, and gun battles. What finally exposed them was something none of them had planned for. A fire started in a hotel, two men became worried about their luggage, and a pair of firefighters remembered their faces. John Dillinger had spent months trying to stay ahead of law enforcement. In Tucson, it was a burning hotel that finally caught him. Thank you for liking the video and subscribing to the channel. If you would like to write the Eclectic Historical Society, you can send a letter to this address, and we will return the favor with a letter written on our 1930 typewriter. With that being said, this is the Eclectic Historical Society, and remember, history is lost if it's not repeated.